Three, two, one. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, I have a very special guest, somebody who I've been in contact. We've been Facebook friends for at least 6 years, 6 or 7 years. Her name is Dori, and she has a very interesting story to tell. And we're going to title this talk that she's going to relate to the audience, From Witchcraft to Christ. So she's going to tell her story about how she kind of got involved into this new age / witchcraft / occult world, and how she was drawn out from that kind of environment into a Christian lifestyle. And I was on her show talking, I think it was my first book, Prophet of Evil. We talked about that on her show, Doors of Deception. And I think our last show was on 2012. So those are still out there on the internet if you'd like to track those down. It's Doors of Deception. Just look up William Ramsey. But we're going to talk about a different subject tonight. Again, Dori, welcome to the show.
Thank you, William.
Great. I'm so glad that you agreed to this interview. We had talked about it for at least a month, so I'm glad that it's happening. But we had some discussions, and you provided me with an outline. But I mean, I guess my suggestion to you is just take your time and tell your story about how you got involved in this kind of world, and you met some very interesting people in that world, so we can talk about them as well. But before maybe telling your story, you could talk a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got started podcasting and telling your story.
Okay. I believe that the capacity for me to eventually get to the point in my life where I embraced witchcraft and magic and shamanism was due to a doorway that was created when I was 2 to 4 years old. Like many people that you're seeing these days that are victims of satanic ritual abuse, they've been sexually abused as children. That happened to me, and I believe that creates a spiritual doorway for entities to have easier access to you, and that's one of the reasons why those people do that. I was raised by a Catholic mother and a father who was Lutheran but didn't really go to church. But anyway, my mother was devoutly Catholic, and she did believe in Jesus. I don't remember us praying to Mary, and she did watch Billy Graham, and I remember as a young child watching Billy Graham and saying that, Jesus was, I responded to the altar call. Well, like a lot of teenagers, I played around with Ouija boards and things like that when I was in high school, and we had really bad experiences like a lot of people do. And I got married in my 20s and began to go to a local Lutheran church. I took my children to Sunday school. I did all the mom things that moms do. And
what part of the country did you grow up in? What state were you in?
Minnesota.
Minnesota, gotcha.
And I'm still in Minnesota. I am about 70 miles south of Minneapolis, the metro.
Gotcha.
So I lived on a farm with my first husband and my boys, and everything was what it was. I mean, we raised sheep and chickens and had a very normal life. And then my first husband and I had a very what do I want to call it? It was a tempestuous relationship, I guess you would say. We would get into fights and it would be loud and anyway. So eventually, after 10 years of marriage, I really gave him the option. I said, I don't think you're happy if you don't want to be married to me anymore. That's okay with me. I will give you what you want. He wanted, no less than joint custody of the kids and wanted me to walk away with no kind of settlement, or we didn't want to do child support. He didn't want to do child support. And I just really felt that my life with him was going to continue to get out of control. We both drank, and it was just not a healthy environment for my kids. So we got divorced, and it was very difficult for me, very difficult, more than I had ever anticipated, because I did have joint custody of my children, and I chose weekends. I wasn't seeing them as often as I needed to, and it affected me spiritually. It traumatized me. And within that trauma opened up those doorways again, I believe, for the demonization, and for me to open myself up again, not up again, because I didn't practice witchcraft as a child. My mother didn't practice witchcraft, but I opened myself up to, I guess, the universe. And I was watching Oprah Winfrey, and I was starting to read some stuff from, that Course in Miracles lady. I don't even remember her.
Mary Ann Williamson?
Yes.
This is what, around the 90s, mid-90s, or what
Yes.
time frame? Okay.
Yes, exactly, mid-90s.
25 years, yeah.
Yes, and so I had started to do some community theater, because when I was in high school, I was always in theater, and I really missed it. So I started to do some community theater, and it was great. And a lot of people encouraged me to audition for the Minnesota Renaissance Festival. So I decided to do that, and I did. And it's 6 weeks of classes every night of the week. And then on weekends, once the show starts, you perform on weekends every Saturday and Sunday for another like 4 or 5 weeks. And I had a full-time job at the time. I was a human resources assistant at a factory, a meat packing facility. So I did all of this, and got into the show, and consequently met, oh my gosh, that Renaissance Festival has to be, I don't know, 90% pagan, perhaps. I don't, maybe higher.
I think that's common for all the Renaissance fairs, not just that one. I think that's the type of person I would find. Yeah, I mean, there was people involved in like the West Memphis 3 case. She goes to all the Renaissance fairs out here. And one of Crowley, Maine acolytes or whatever in the U.S., a guy by the name of McMurtry, that's where they proselytized, was at the Renaissance fairs in Northern California. So I know kind of that's an epicenter or a hotspot for a lot of paganisms, which is it's an introduction, right?
Yeah. So it kind of started with this. My performer name is Moxie the Gypsy. And I was nominated for the best new performer that year and everything. I mean, I really embraced this gypsy character. It was like my alter ego. And a few of the characters, this one guy in particular, he's kind of a dark fellow anyway, not like there weren't a bunch of them. This one guy in particular, wow, he just really didn't like me. And I asked some people, at breakfast one morning, I said, what is wrong with this guy? And he walks past, not that I had any interest in him, but I mean, he's just oozed like hatred towards me. I'm like, what is his deal? I've never done anything to him. I don't even know him. And the person I was talking to said, it's your power. And I said, excuse me. And they said, it's your power. And I said, what power? And they said, your personal power, your power as a witch. And I said, I'm not a witch. And they said, you're kidding. And I said, no, I'm not kidding. And then they must like proselytize, because I had people coming up to me and going, you come from a long line of witches and yada, yada, yada.
That's actually very common, isn't it? They tell people they have a bloodline or something.
Yes.
Kind of flattering type of thing.
It becomes, yes, you kind of start thinking, wow, because you're sort of in love with that romantic idea of, this like hocus pocus, and think bewitched and things like that. And you don't realize. Anyway, so I went back to my hometown, and I knew of a lady that worked at a bookstore in my hometown, and I knew that she was into some stuff because I used to live next door to her. And so I went there and leaned over the counter and whispered to her, do you have a primer on witchcraft? And she said, yes, would you like a mini brown paper bag? And I said, of course. Anyway, so I got this primer. Basically, it was a book about what do witches believe, what do witches do, this sort of thing. And when I realized that my liberal views at the time fit perfectly with these readies, which their core is, and it harm none, do what thou will, which of course is attributed to Crowley. So I got...
It's like an axiom. It's like, do what thou will and harm ye none, or something like that.
Yes, exactly. Or it's called a reed.
Reed, right. R-E-D-E, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
The witch's reed, yes.
Yes, and I really, it just really resonated with me, of course, because the familiar spirits are just dying to get their hands on me. And so I got some books from Doreen Virtue on candle magic and things like that. And what normal when I'm going to say it's sympathetic witchcraft is usually where you start. You start with some candles. If you're trying to affect something, you get some candles and different colored ones corresponding with what you're trying to affect. And so candle magic was probably my first thing that I did. And I had, then after the Renaissance Festival, after I did the Halloween thing that they have there, the Trail of Terror, of which after the Renaissance Festival got done and I did Trail of Terror, I met an entirely new group of people.
What's the Trail of Terror? I don't know.
That is a horror maze.
Oh, okay.
You dress up in costumes and you scare people for the month of October, basically.
So all of the people from the Renaissance Fair from the summer then get involved in that, I see.
Pretty much.
And you stay in character like you're like the Renaissance Fair. People don't know. It's like Disney.
Well, yes, but different characters, and not as developed, but anything scary you can come up with. We had Hollywood people that came in and showed us how to do makeup and things like that. So then I met an even deeper level of people that I actually met and began to hang out with a vampire cult.
Interesting.
Who spent a great deal of time at a club in Minneapolis called Ground Zero.
Wow,
especially there was bondage night on Tuesday nights. Wow. And we would all go to this club, and I'm still pretty innocent. I mean, I've done some candle magic and I've read a couple of books by Dori Virtue, and all of a sudden I'm hanging out with this vampire cult, and I didn't hang out with them very long because that was much too dark for me at that point.
Were they into blood drinking? You ever hear of the the Kentucky vampire cult? They ended up killing somebody. Yeah. Blood drinking and all this kind of stuff.
They were, and that one crime reporter wrote a book on it. His name was Rod, I believe. Anyway,
about the Kentucky Vampire Clan, or
that ended up in Florida killing this girl.
Yes, yep.
Right. Yeah. So they exchanged that kind of thing, and I wouldn't understand for many years later the aberrant sexual energy that creates manifestations in the ether. Okay, demons like blood a lot, and they obviously like human sacrifice. Now, your normal everyday average candle magic witch isn't out in the woods sacrificing babies. That's not really what happens. You have to really pursue those levels at some point. But this was just a little too, because one of the things I understood already was that bisexuality was a whole big, huge deal with this too. And that combined with some other things just really seemed extremely unhealthy. It seemed really dangerous. And the Trail of Terror got over with, and I, pretty much, kind of hung out in my hometown. But I did spend like a couple of days before Thanksgiving with a group of these people that I had met through the Renaissance Festival. And on the way back to my hometown, I got in a really bad car accident and shattered my leg. And anyway, so now it was my right leg, so I couldn't drive or do anything. So what I did was I read and read and read and studied and got more magical books. Donald Michael Craig, started reading his stuff, and whatever else I could get my hands on. I got the Enochian magic book, and I don't know, some other stuff.
John
D. Yeah, John Dee's book. So then in the spring, when I got my cast off my leg, and I had studied herbalism for years anyway for healing. And now I had been reading that herbs had magical properties besides healing properties. You could use them for spells. So my candle magic was progressing into herbal magic, and the herbs had to be charged, and you did that during, I learned all the planetary hours and what herbs corresponded to what planets. So what planets corresponded to love, fame, riches, whatever, that kind of thing. There's certain stuff for all of that. So there was a local store that had opened up, and I somehow found out they had herbs, probably from the lady at the bookstore. So I went to the herbal store, which had all kinds of magical implements, and the lady that ran it happened to be, I came up to the counter and she said, "Wow, you know what you're doing." And I said, "Excuse me?" And she goes, "Well, the herbs you picked out seem to be pretty specific. It seems like you know what you're doing." And I said, I've been doing some study. And so she invited me over to her house. And so I went over there and we drank beer and talked about herbs. And she started talking, we started having these discussions about witchcraft. And she asked me if I wanted to join her coven. I'm like, "Well, what do you do?" Right? And so it's always daughters of a goddess, some goddess or another. And so I joined that coven, and basically we all had black robes, and it's kind of like a really weird Tupperware party.
Right. So it's all kind of middle-aged women, families, or something like that.
I have a lot of questions about the coven because I didn't know exactly what I was getting into. And so she, it was called the Daughters of Artemis, and she gave me some stuff to study about the goddess Artemis, and she gave me Buckland's book to borrow, to read, and basically...
That's the complete book of witchcraft, right?
Correct.
Gotcha.
And so I said, yeah, sure. I might as well get formal with this stuff that I had been messing around with at home. So, I had bought tarot cards by this point and was messing with them and trying to learn how to use them and all that. So we did the whole thing. I mean, she cast the circle. She was the leader. So she cast the circle. She, did the thing with the athame, and you raise your hand and you say some stuff, and just all
that. The athame is the ritual knife, right?
Correct.
Where did you guys have it, in a house, or did you go out into the woods?
In her store.
Okay, so you did in the store.
Yep. She had a back room. We went back there, and that's where that all took place, except on Samhain, Halloween.
Halloween, right? And how many participants were there in your first group meeting?
In my first group, 6.
Gotcha.
Okay. It's a small town, so if people aren't going to recognize Samhain as Halloween, but if they see the word, it looks like Samhain, yes. Samhain, just to clarify. So that one was at her house usually, and there were always more people because she invited people from further away to come in. Anyway, we did prick our fingers and put it into a glass of wine, and everybody put a drop of blood in the glass of wine, and then you pass that around and you drink it because now you're connected, that sort of thing. So we did all that stuff. And this, yeah, probably, we drank a lot of beer and we talked a lot. And every once in a while we'd have a ritual. The new moon, because the moon is dark, is always a prime time for a ritual. And any holiday, I believe there's 8 what they call Sabbats. We didn't do sex stuff. We didn't do anything like that. We basically would get out a tarot card and do a meditation, a guided meditation. So during one of these guided meditations, and it was in the spring, so I can't remember exactly which holiday. I don't remember if it was Ostara or Candlemas. Candlemas is in February. Ostara is the next one, which is what Easter is named after. But we were having a guided meditation, and she had us in our, to go to our place, kind of our. Well, I started having this really vivid vision that I'm in an underground cave. There's all these candles all over the place, and there's an altar, and it's got the athame and the chalice and the salt and all the stuff. And there's books and bells and yada, yada, yada. Witches and bells are a thing, to summon the spirits. And so there was a huge cauldron, life-size, like what you see in the old movies where cannibals would cook people in a cauldron, huge.
Right.
Okay, so I come out of the water. The water was black. I come out of this black water. It was a rebirth and renewal guided meditation.
Wow.
So I come out of this, because actually she's talking every once in a while and you're having your own things happening in your head. I come out of the water of this cauldron in this vision that I'm having, and I look around the room, and I don't remember getting out of the cauldron, but I remember light, bright, blinding light, and a man in a throne, and I feel this love and this peace. And I look down at my hand, my arm, whatever, in this vision, and I see that I'm connected to this man by a golden thread, a golden cord, a golden thread. Well, the next thing you know, I'm on my knees, and I kind of am hugging his leg. I'm kind of hugging his legs, and he just feels so warm and loving. And I'm like, who are you? And he waves his hand around the room, and he says, all of this is unnecessary when you are connected to me, and you are connected to me. And I knew instantly who it was, and it kind of freaked me out. Like, what's Jesus doing in my witchcraft guided meditation vision, right?
Right.
What really bothered me, and I didn't say really anything for the rest of the ritual. I was affected, and wow, I didn't know what to do with this, but I did know that I had to leave the coven. That I knew. So a few days went by, and I contacted, the head witch, and I said, can I come over? And she said, yeah, something's wrong. And I said, yeah, and I need to talk to you. And I said, we're still friends and everything, but here's my robe. I can't do this anymore. She said, what happened in vision? And I told her, and she, whatever. Anyway, so I just shifted gears at that point. I shifted gears at that point to kind of I didn't go to any more of her coven meetings, but I still went to the store, and I started, I just started getting more into Drunvalo Melchizedek and the Christ consciousness. Okay. This Christ consciousness it's a really big thing actually right now. And some Christians are starting to get into this Christ consciousness, that Christ was a great teacher and he was an ascended master and all of this. Mm-hmm. And she ended up having a workshop at her store with this psychic lady. And I went, and the lady, for some reason, she couldn't stop looking at me during this whole thing. And there was probably about 20 people there. And so afterwards you could pay and have her give you a reading. And she said, you are from the angelic realm and you are surrounded by angels. And we need to exchange contact information, because being from the angelic realm is a blessing and a burden, because you've been given much and yada, yada, yada. So I exchanged phone numbers with this lady, and this really made the head of the coven really unhappy, because you don't want just some acolyte who just happens to know a lot about herbs and is, just handed her robe back like, a couple of months prior, to be all of a sudden being told she's from the angelic realm and this and that.
Gotcha.
Anyway.
Before we move forward, can you explain who Drunvalo Melchizedek is? He's kind of like a new age type teacher, correct? So
yes,
he has, like, Christ is an ascended master among ascended masters, but he also teaches kind of other new age doctrines.
He does. He has mystery schools. He has basically the left and right mystery schools. And actually, my first tattoo is the Eye of Horus from the, I believe, right-handed mystery school of creativity, et cetera, et cetera. Melchizedek is supposed to be based off biblical passage, because that's one of the other things witches, magicians like to do, is they like to take things from the Bible. They like to twist them and adapt them to their own thing, because one of the things that
well, Melchizedek in the Bible was the one, I believe it was at the time of David or something, in Melchizedek, or before Abraham.
Yes.
The guy before Abraham who anointed Abraham. It's kind of a mysterious figure, if I remember.
Very mysterious figure. And supposedly Christ is of the order of Melchizedek.
Right. And that's actually ties in with Mormonism, because their priesthood has two orders, the order of Aaron and the order of Melchizedek. So you're kind of into this mystery school, new age, like, who is Melchizedek? I mean, and I think he's only mentioned in one very small passage. Very vague. Who is this person?
Very vague. So I got both of Drunvalo's books. They were blue books. I burned them after I became a Christian. So some of this is difficult for me to pull forward, because I've been out of it for a long time. But I went to go see Drunvalo in person, and he was the least impressive person that I went to see, because I kind of ended up hanging out with some sort of interesting characters, and he was the least interesting of all of them. He seemed to be the most concerned with just money and not really who you were or whatever.
Oh, interesting. So he charged a lot for his teachings and stuff like that. Interesting.
He did.
He's kind of like a cult leader then, in a way, huh?
He is a strange dude, man. He claims to be a walk-in.
Which means?
A walk-in means that, here I am, Dori, but at some point I have an accident and I lose consciousness, and another spirit comes in and inhabits me, like perhaps an extraterrestrial, or an angel, an angelic, an angel guide, a spirit guide inhabits you.
It's like Ramtha. Have you ever heard of Ramtha?
Yes.
Oh yeah, okay. So Jay-Z Knight or whatever, and this guy from Atlantis inhabits her. Sorry.
These are all.
So Drunvalo is supposedly in that kind of that sense, where somebody else is talking through him.
Not that someone else is talking through him, that he actually allowed whatever entity it was to actually take up residence in him permanently. So he doesn't channel. He actually became this figure.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. I had never heard that term in that reference, walk-in, before.
Yeah. And I knew I never wanted that to happen to me. Other people found that really fascinating. I didn't. I started to be really disturbed by these ascended masters and people who were into them. And this is where the Saint Germain stuff comes in. You heard of Saint Germain?
Yes. Uh-huh. So I think that is the Rosicrucian guy, isn't it? Or maybe not.
Christian Rosenkreutz and Rosicrucianism. Christian Rosenkreutz supposedly is an ascended master. There's this hierarchy of ascended masters. David Wilcock is into the ascended masters.
I heard David Icke is as well. Like one of the ascended masters is informing him, Rikorsky. You heard of the name Rikorsky?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. I've heard of Rikorsky.
So that's
Madame
who's talking
Blavatsky.
Blavatsky, all right. It's true.
Madame Blavatsky pretty much introduced the ascended masters to.
Fascinating. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yes. Interesting thing, William. Let me really go off on a side road here. The ascended masters started to really bother me. I mean, not like physically, but the whole concept. It really started to stink like hooey to me, and I didn't like it. And I followed their thread through Madame Blavatsky to the Episcopalian Church.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Well, they've since kind of buried a lot of
There's
that.
a tiny little bit of background noise. I'm hearing like a little buzzing or something like that. Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay.
Let me try turning down my mic. How's that?
Perfect. That sounds better. Sounds good.
Is that better?
Yeah, it seems better. It just seems like I feel like it's coming from your side. I don't think it's mine. But like a or like a foghorn or something.
Really? I shut my fan off and everything.
Okay, cool. All right, sorry.
Maybe I should move the microphone a little closer.
That sounds good. That sounds better.
Okay.
I don't know if it'll even come through on the audio. So
Maybe I'll turn it
I
down.
apologize. So there's a tie between the Ascended Masters and the Episcopalian Church. I never knew that.
There is a tie between Madame Blavatsky and the Episcopalian Church. And there's actually a sort of a Crowleyan connection too. There's oh my goodness, I'd have to research it again. I tracked it all down and had copious amounts of notes because it was very disturbing. It had to do with Blavatsky's infiltration of the church. That was her goal, to get humanity to worship Lucifer, was infiltration of the church. And
was one aspect of it. Yeah, right. Interesting.
Went for the Episcopalians, yeah.
Wow.
And they were one of the first ones to have women bishops. They're one of the first ones to have a, LGBT.
Oh, interesting.
Bishop.
So they're early adopters for that stuff. Wow.
Right. So anyway, this Ascended Master stuff was just really, I don't know, it was really weird. So I ended up, the angelic magic, then I'm like, I'm leaving these Ascended Masters be because this is just really doesn't seem like it's not resonating with me, is what you say.
Gotcha.
If you're not into something. It doesn't resonate.
Doesn't resonate. Okay.
Right. So I got a book specifically on Kabbalistic magic and angelic magic. The book was angelic magic, but it was written by a Kabbalist.
Okay.
So I started communing with the archangels of the Kabbalah. I started doing the sigils, writing out the sigils some of them in the Theban script. And of course, numerology is all part of all this whole thing. So one thing builds upon another thing. I mean, one day you're burning candles and the next thing, you're writing scripts to, archangels, and it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper.
And is that all John Dee stuff, the angelic masters or angelic communications, or is there other stuff as well?
There's other stuff. John Dee heard from an angel, and it was channeled. It was channeled to him. The Enochian magic was channeled.
Right, with the Enochian script and all that stuff.
Right, it was channeled to John Dee.
Right.
This Kabbalistic magic is different. It's based on the Kabbalah.
Okay, sorry. I don't know.
Okay. So because it was based on the Kabbalah, I felt that Kabbalah is part of Jewish mysticism, which is kind of connected to the Bible, and I really didn't resonate with the goddess thing ever. I always felt that God was still God to me and this goddess thing. Okay, I got to believe kind of that maybe it was, maybe God had a wife. Maybe that's why Genesis says in the beginning, we. Okay, and this is, so I got into the Kabbalah and the angelic magic, and you progress into deeper, longer meditation. You start doing, in your medication, you start doing your own vision casting, which is where you're basically envisioning what you want to manifest into your life, which is what the book The Secret is all about.
Right, manifesting. Wow, great. And it's The Secret is really, yeah, gotcha. The Secret's different than Marianne Wilson, right?
Yes, The Secret is different. However, there are Christians telling people that The Secret, there are Christians that I know that read The Secret, use the principles of The Secret to manifest things in their life. A lot of them are in multi-level marketing companies.
Wow.
And this is really disturbing to me because even the witches that I knew and hung around with didn't like the book The Secret, because you cannot just heap great things into your life, because physics apply in the etheric realm as they apply in the physical realm. It was really God who first said, as above, so below. What is done on earth is done in heaven. So there are consequences for every action. There's an equal and opposite reaction, and that is true in the spirit realm as well, and that's biblical. So trying to just heap riches and power and money onto yourself without having ramifications is just not, it's black magic, really. But I got a book from my Jean Gonzalez Whippler, and I started doing, some more spells, even got into voodoo for a little while, some different, the Orishas and things like that. I mean, I'm telling you, anytime you get into this new age, you have a plethora. It's like a soup of people who are into all sorts of different things. And the UFO thing plays into that eventually. Okay.
Well, it's something I've been researching very recently, but that's interesting that you as well make that connection.
Absolutely. One of the things when you're studying Drunvalo Melchizedek is you put yourself into this energetic tetrahedron. Okay. And this is how you travel through the universe, is in this tetrahedron.
What did he call it? The something of life? Isn't there another name for that?
Flower of Life.
Flower of Life. Is that right? Is that the same thing?
Well, his books are called The Flower of Life 1 and The Flower of Life 2. But the thing that you travel in is called something else. And I will look that up, or it might come to me.
Okay.
It actually might come to me. But anyway, so you kind of put yourself into this tetrahedron in your meditation, and then you go all over and you meet ETs or whatever. I mean, it just all of a sudden you get, this is happening to you. You start seeing them. They start communicating with you. Besides the archangels I had around me, and these things are all demonic. They're all familiar spirits, and they're all things that any magician who wants to summon entities, if you're serious about it and you're willing to put in the time and energy, they will respond to you, because they want attention, and energy follows attention. Once again, it's a physics thing.
Interesting.
So I started watching Project Camelot videos, and there was this girl named Jessica. Oh, I kind of skipped over the sex magic stuff. Remember,
we don't have to cover it if you don't feel comfortable talking about that.
It's one of those things where, of course, it works because there's a lot of energy involved in that. And for whatever reason, demons are very attracted to it, especially anything that strays from, this is why pornography will demonize you. Anything that strays from normal. It attracts a high level of energy. And when you're single, of either sex, it's just you're operating outside of something that is sacred to God. So you're operating outside of God's protection with that sort of thing. So that's all part of this with the angels and everything, and the Kabbalah and all that involves all these different aspects.
Gotcha.
So I'm watching Project Camelot, and I see this Jessica girl, this crystal child, and I had gotten to be some friends online because now the internet is a big thing. Got to be with some friends online with some other witches and psychics and things like that. And I pretty much had left my local deal and kind of was starting to get to be deeper friends with people outside of Minnesota. And I cannot tell you how I met Jessica. Oh, I think I wrote to her. And I resonated with her for some reason. So she got a hold of me. She called me on the phone or got a hold of me on Skype, and Jessica and I became friends.
And so she was kind of one of these leading lights in Project Camelot. Is that correct?
Well, she was one of the interviews that Carrie Cassidy did.
Okay, gotcha.
She was one of the interviews, and you can still find her on Project Camelot. The interview is very old now, but her interview is still on there.
Okay.
So I got to know Jessica, and Jessica is one that told me that the extraterrestrials were coming to get me at night, that I was an abductee and that my job was designing crop circles.
Weird. So she wanted to induct you into making crop circles?
No, she said I was already doing that.
So
that was my job.
She tried, and did you believe what she told you was true?
Of course I did. Okay. Just like I believed I was from the angelic realm, which she confirmed. I was from the angelic realm. You see, they tell you these lies because something inside you wants to believe them. It's just like reincarnation. Somebody is always a queen or a baron or a famous someone from somewhere.
Right, they're always famous or well-known.
No one's ever Joe Schmo, the gravel layer, okay?
Right, exactly, right.
No one's ever Roger the Shrubber.
Right, such a good point. Right. So funny.
It is. They hook you. And so I, of course, had a subscription to, Coast to Coast, Joe Genori's, radio program. And besides Jessica, I had found Reality Sandwich. I know. I was watching Stephen Colbert one night. He had Daniel Pinchbeck on as a guest. Gotcha. And Daniel Pinchbeck had just written Quetzalcoatl, 2012, The Return of Quetzalcoatl.
Right.
And so I immediately got Daniel's book, and I started going to conferences to find Daniel Pinchbeck because I wanted to know. I was now interested in this neo-shamanism. This new shamanism was kind of like my new trip now.
And that was his first book in 2002, was Breaking Open the Head, A Psychedelic Journey into the Heart of Contemporary Shamanism. And that's really how he got his credibility. And, he has kind of a notorious reputation, is my understanding. But Pinchbeck has been out there. Yeah, you laugh. But, yeah, I mean, you can tell probably firsthand. So you tracked him down and went and became a neo-shaman.
Sort of. That was my next, that was my next goal after the UFO phenomenon, of course, was still a big deal. And I had found another couple of ladies in my hometown way off from this. By this time, I had parted ways with the lady that was the head of the coven from years and years ago. But,
did you ever have a UFO experience?
Many.
Very similar to other UFO experiences that other people are telling. Do you believe your experiences with that were in the same line of familiar spirits and this other that's what's happening to you, or that you actually were visited by somebody from another galaxy?
They actually come and they take you. They actually, while you're sleeping, they come and take you, and it's interdimensional.
Interdimensional, gotcha. Fascinating.
Okay.
Well, we could probably do a whole nother show on your experiences with that.
Probably.
Yeah. I'm interested in that, these people's
Yeah.
So-called UFO, UFO.
UFO enthusiasts, right. And when I went to see General Melchizedek, there was just a slew of them. He seems to attract a great number of them.
Oh, really? So he's has some UFO stories too within his whole stuff. I didn't know that. Fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. This stuff is deep and thick
So it's
and
all New Age. These guys are all New Age. Wilcock and David Good are New Agers, also into UFOs. And it goes back to Valley. I just did an interview with Tom Mellett. He's talking about all these guys are involved in this. Ballet, Lavenda's occultist.
oh yeah.
These guys are level 7 OT operating Thetan Scientologists who are talking about the UFO, which I think really would bring a different coloration into that study if people knew that he went through the highest levels of Scientology. You can talk about Hubbard and Parsons and Crowley all day. Wow.
Absolutely.
See, I didn't know
that is it. Are you familiar with Project Camelot?
I've heard about it. For people who don't know, Project Camelot was I think if I remember, it was two people, a guy and a girl who did a lot of interviews that were New Age and
correct.
Invited a lot of different people. I don't know the real details. Maybe you can fill me in on that.
I can. The videos, for the most part, are still up. The reason why I'm saying something is because she interviewed Peter Lavenda more than once.
Wow, interesting.
She interviewed Standeo often. Now, Standeo is a Christian. He was one of the few Christians she interviewed, but she interviewed him often.
Interesting.
And
he has a history too, right? I mean, he's been around.
He was at Pine Gap in Australia.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, Nephilim stuff. Okay, which is part of the UFO. I mean, it's wow. Anyway, yeah, I think, am I thinking of the right things? It's Stan who escaped from the base in Pine. I may not be thinking. I better be careful. I may not be thinking of the right guy.
Okay.
But
I think that sounds right.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing leads to another, and I also found a lady up in Minneapolis who was giving classes, and she was a kind of a Christ consciousness person. She's written 11 or 12 books on the chakras. Chakras are your energy centers, of course. So I was taking classes from her. She pulled me aside one day, and she said, they want you to write a book. And I said, what? She said, they. I'm like, they? She said, yes, want you to write a book. Spirit guides, them, the advisors.
Gotcha.
And so I was really resistant to that in my spirit. And because she kept telling me, just shut the door and sit at your computer and they will write it for you.
Interesting. So they're going to write you your book.
And I just, and she said, you will be, she said, they are promising me, you get that to them. And she had an agent for me and everything. She said, you will be as big as J.K. Rowling and what's her face that wrote, Stephanie Meyer that wrote, and this freaked me out.
Full Moon. What was it? Stephanie Meyer's vampire stories, right?
Yes, vampire stories.
Vampire werewolf stories, yeah.
Yes. I can't think of the name of it because I just, anyway. So once again, they're promising you bigger and better things because they want you to propagate their agenda.
Right.
Right. They want you to propagate their agenda.
The Twilight novels, that's what the name is.
Yes, Twilight. So, you're into all this stuff, all these aspects, you're covering all your bases, because I'm a multitasker. And Daniel Pinchbeck is offering a retreat in Boulder, Utah. And I talked to my boyfriend at the time, and I said, seems weird at my age to call him a boyfriend, but that's what it was. And I said, do you want to do this thing? And he's like, yeah, sure, why not? We had already gone to a festival where Daniel Pinchbeck was one of the speakers, and also Graham Hancock. And
so you saw Graham Hancock?
Yeah, I don't know if I went to his talk or not. I might have gone to his talk. And then there was another guy too that did some Maya thing that was at this festival. so then I went to a retreat, and the retreat was very small. It was Daniel and his core people from Reality Sandwich, Jonathan, and his other really core people from Reality Sandwich. But Dennis McKenna was there, who was Terrence McKenna's brother, and of course Daniel. And you're at a retreat, so you actually interact with these people very closely.
Uh-huh.
And I'll tell you my story privately at some point about Daniel, but it was kind of funny because I did make a comment, and Daniel kind of slammed me a little bit in front of everybody, and I'm like, oh. Well, I said, that's quite a declaration. I think that the research will bear out that what I've said is true or something. Anyway, then later on, when we were outside sitting at a table, he kind of looked at me and he starts laughing. He goes, Dori, he goes, I'm really sorry. I kind of called you out and slammed you. And I probably was kind of called for it. I said, well, just because you haven't heard about it yet, I said, you'll be talking about it in a couple of weeks or whatever. Anyway.
That's interesting. And Dennis McKenna is the brother of, what's his name again? Right, Terrence. He wrote DMT, the Spirit Molecule. He was in that movie that was narrated by Joe Rogan in 2010. Do you remember when you went on the retreat? What year that was?
On the retreat, probably in 2007.
So it was 2008. So it was before that. And then I think Dennis McKenna wrote The Invisible Landscape, Mind Hallucinogens in the I Ching, and then recently Return to the Brain of Eden, Restoring the Connection Between Neurochemistry and Consciousness. So he still seems to be around. But yeah,
Dennis was Terrence's brother. Terrence wrote the I Ching. Terrence is deceased.
Right. Sorry.
That's okay. Terrence is deceased, died of brain cancer. I can't remember what year, but Dennis teaches bioentheogens. He's a biochemist. He is the one that Aveda Cosmetics hired to develop their plant-based, which I use still faithfully because Dennis was more into the plants and what the plants could do for medicine and cosmetics instead of using synthetics, to use natural compounds. And he was taking people to South America to teach them about plants. Okay. But because he's Terrence McKenna's brother, he's very sought after by these people who, want to hang out with him but Dennis was teaching when I went to that retreat. Dennis was a professor at the University of Minnesota.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And was teaching botany of a high level of botany. Anyway, so while I'm at this retreat, some people are joking around about UFOs and wouldn't it be really cool if at the party that night. Now, see, I don't drink anymore at this point. I stopped drinking and for a few years. And they're joking about, wouldn't it be cool if UFOs showed up at the party or whatever? And I said, well, I'll see what I can do about that. And one of them turned around and looked at me and they said, what? And they said, oh yeah, I can summon the UFOs. And they said, really? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, okay, so see if you can, muster, see if you can call them in tonight or whatever. So I wasn't down at the party, but of what I found out the next morning was everybody was tripping on mushrooms. And I don't drink or party, so my fiance and I went to the campground, and the next day I'm being told all these stories and this and that, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of a big joke. And then we went outside to leave that day, and there were some very strange people there, very strange, like stranger than, they weren't there the whole time, but all of a sudden they were there that morning, and they were dark. They were dressed in all black clothes, and they had black hair and like black leather pants, and they were all very skinny. And I came out of the building after breakfast and they started speaking to me in like picked or something strange. And I didn't know what they were saying, but they were saying something to me. And I wanted to ask some people about them, but we really had to go because we were in Utah and we had to get back to Minnesota like in a couple of days. It was just the oddest thing. it was just one of those really odd things. So we went from Utah to Colorado, that first leg of our journey that night. And so we had traveled all day, and I got out of the shower, and there was a huge hole in my thigh, like a large puncture wound, like it was punctured with a swizzle stick. Okay, like that big. It was really weird. And I got really, really sick after we got home for a long time. So I don't know what happened to me. I figured at that point I had been abducted. And I also had gotten fairly a relationship with Carrie Cassidy at this point through email and Skype conversations. And she was putting on a conference, and I was going to go to California, and I was going to, help wrangle the guests, the speakers. And, but I got really sick at this retreat, and I think it was, God was like working already. And then that was like towards I think the Boulder Mountain retreat with Daniel Pinchbeck was like in August or something. And now this other retreat with Carrie Cassidy, or not retreat, but conference with Carrie Cassidy was supposed to be in September, and I couldn't go. And then in October, I went to visit a friend in Missouri, and for some reason I threw a Bible in with my stuff. And I was staying out in her casita, and I went to bed for the night, and there was this horrible scraping noise on two sides of the casita, and the third side was into a carport, and the back side was covered in thick, heavy brush. So whatever was making this, it sounded like somebody had a pickaxe and was scraping against the side of your house. It was a huge noise. If they were on the back side, they would have had to have been moving through this thicket. Well, it scared me. It scared me so much. I literally crawled down off because it was kind of a bunk. It was a built-up high bed. I crawled down off the bunk, and I got down on the floor, and I didn't want to turn on any lights because I was scared. So I crawled over to my bin where my Bible was, and I turned on my handy-dandy camping headlamp, and I just opened the Bible up to whatever page it opened up to. And it said, "I am with you no matter where you may lodge." Wow. No matter where you're staying, I am with you. And so I shut the Bible and I put it back, and I prayed for protection. That was October, and I got back, and then this old coven lady and I reconnected because she was going to an initiation with a shamanic, a Chilean shaman, and I wanted to do this. I wanted to get initiated as a shaman. So I went to the shamanic initiation, and the shaman asked me to come to Chile and study with her. So all these things keep happening to me. Like, people keep wanting me to come and do these things. And my husband and I decided that we were going to get married at Thanksgiving because his children were home from out of state. So I elected not to go to Chile and study with the shaman lady like I told her I would do it in the spring. So this is 2009 now. No, this is 2008. 2008, I got initiated as a shaman, like Halloween weekend, got married in November at Thanksgiving. And unbeknownst to me, something shifted in the heavens. Something shifted in the spiritual realm after I got married, because I started to get attacked. I was attacked on a regular basis by the entities that I had been surrounding myself with for years. It got so bad by the end of 2009, I was sitting on the couch. I was starting to stay up all night because the attacks were so terrible. They were physical. I was being slammed on the ground. One night my hip was like dislocated. I had constant migraines. everybody, all my gurus kept telling me to put myself in a bubble of golden light. And I did that all the time. And people were saying, command him to leave. Well, I commanded him to leave. They wanted me to do these things for them. And I just didn't want to do it. Something in me was resisting. So I was sitting on the couch one night and I'm listening to Coast, which doesn't start till midnight. So that kept me busy till 5 o'clock in the morning. And L.A. Marzulli was a guest on Coast to Coast. And he kept talking about the guidebook to the supernatural. And I'm on his website and I'm frantically searching for it and I can't find it. And so I'm listening and he says something about aliens are the fallen angels from Genesis 6. I felt like somebody thumped me on the chest with the biggest hammer. I was just literally felt like I was pushed back, like just boom, it hit me in the chest. And I knew he was right. And so I went and got that Bible out that I had drugged with me, got the Bible out, and I read Genesis 6, and my hair stood on end. And I knew what he was saying was right, but I wasn't like ready yet. So in December, the attacks were just getting worse and worse and worse. And I remember having a dream. I was going through a membrane, through a portal, and they had me almost all the way on the other side, these entities, and promising me all this, fame and fortune and the everything that, my gurus were saying about, write this book they wanted and this and that, and, study in Chile and, do ayahuasca tourism, and you're going to make all this money. And money wasn't a hook enough for me, and neither was fame. So they had me in this dream. They had me partway through this portal, but I wouldn't go all the way through. I would not go all the way through. And that was like in November, late, the year after I got married. It was almost our wedding anniversary, I think. Anyway, so December, I heard L.A. Marzulli on Coast to Coast. About 3 days before, 3 days before New Year's Eve, he wrote me back. Well, I wrote to him in December, about 2 weeks after he was on Coast to Coast, and he wrote me back on December 31st, 2009. I told him about all the attacks, everything I was doing, everything. I just confessed everything to him. And he wrote back to me and said, your only hope is to turn away from everything that you've been doing and all the people associated with it. Get on your knees and ask Jesus Christ to come in your life as your Lord and Savior. Your life depends on it. And he said, do it now. I'm going to send someone to disciple you. I'm going to give her your email address, burn everything, smash your crystals, anoint your doorways, turn away, close down your website, close down your Facebook page, because I was known by a certain name back then. And I did all of that. I shut it down and I asked the devil to take away everything he had ever given to me because I didn't want any of it anymore. That's why sometimes I struggle to remember what things are called or what the name of the books were and things like that, because, until I realized that there were people in this realm that need help and need people like me to be honest about what we did. I just didn't want any part of it, but it is important. It's so important because Jesus is simple. And I don't mean to say that in a negative way. When you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, it's the easiest thing you will ever do. He doesn't ask anything from you. He doesn't ask you to fly around in UFOs and make crop circles. He doesn't ask you to mix up batches of ayahuasca and have terrifying visions. He doesn't ask you to perform rituals. There's no next level. There's no next thing. You accept him and that's it. He accepts you back and loves you right there and then. And he has power over everything, every creature, every spirit, demon, anything I ever worked with. I say, in the name of Jesus, and they're gone. Because believe me, they still try to come and attack me because I played with them once. And the name of Jesus and Jesus Christ in my life has been the greatest, greatest thing that has ever happened to me.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that testimony. So the advice that L.A. Marzulli gave you, when you put that into practice, all of the torment from these entities vanished, ended?
Yeah, they tried, like, and I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. And I had to go through I went through deliverance, okay? Because I had entities all over. My husband saw them. My grandchildren saw shadow people in the house. I would Skype with people in the New Age and they would see shimmering creatures behind me.
Wow.
And they could see them on Skype. They were everywhere around me, in my house. I mean, it was crazy. So I went through deliverance. I mean, Ellie didn't say that, but he did send a person to help me, and she discipled me for a couple of years. I mean, the first book I read was the book of John, and John 1:1 through 1:5. John 1:5 has the most incredible line ever. When you accept Jesus Christ into your life, all these people in the New Age talk about light, 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 light and love, light and love. It's not the same light as the light that Jesus gives you. And John 1:5 says, and the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. These entities no longer even know what they're looking at once you accept Jesus Christ. They almost cock their heads in disbelief because they don't know what they're looking at anymore. It's really
fascinating.
Yeah. It's the real deal.
Yeah, you've had some incredible experiences, but what a great story. I think that your tale fits the title of our discussion, which is, Witchcraft to Christ. So Thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I think that's, maybe we should just finish up by saying that you are starting up again your podcast, Doors of Deception. And so people can look for that. Where could they find that?
It's coming in September, and it will be on the Fringe Radio Network. It will also be on Spreaker, Doors of Deception. I'm also working on a website that will be doorsofdeception.net. It is not published yet. It will be published in September when I fire my show up again. And I am currently working on some interviews like I did before when I did the show. And hopefully you'll be coming on with me to do an interview about the smiley face killers, because that is, wow.
That's a mind bender. Yeah.
I have pages and pages and pages of notes, and I just found a sigil that I'm going to forward to you that actually has a smiley face on top of crossbones. Instead of a skull, it's actually a smiley on the crossbones. Very interesting. So
I just got a picture the other day of a smiley face at Untermeyer Park, which is where the Process Church used to do its rituals. And so I mean, it's associated with a lot of this deep, dark, occult process stuff. So it's really, I mean, right. I couldn't discount it. So, and it's around. People still send me to this day references to smiley faces in movies, comics that are current of 2018. There's still something is still going on under the surface that I don't fully comprehend, but I'm beginning to understand more.
Right.
And how can people contact you? I know you and I interact a lot on Facebook. Is that, if anybody has any questions or would like to follow up with you,
yes,
is that a good place?
Yes, it is. There's two places on Facebook. I have a page called Doors of Deception. I also have my personal page, which you are welcome to friend me on Facebook, and you're welcome to message me there. It's Dori, Dori Etheridge. And I have doorsofdeception@gmail.com. If you have a long correspondence that you need to, send instead of a instant message, you can get a hold of me that way as well. And I'm happy to help. If you are in a situation that sounds similar to the situations that I've been in, and you are looking for some help, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'll do my best to get you, to share with you what Christ has given me.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story, Dori. I really appreciate it. And good luck with your future podcast endeavors. Again,
Thank you.
Dori, and we talked about her ascension from witchcraft to Christ. Thank you very much for listening.